Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, I'm finally going to be sharing my final female K-pop daesang predictions for 2025. The year is almost over, and after such a long year, we are finally entering daesang season. So think of the Melon Music Awards, Mama, and a few others as well. This is personally my favorite time of the year, as not only do I get to share my final predictions, but also we get to see our favorite groups and idols all come together for such a massive event. And of course, the distribution of daesangs, which is the highest honor in all of K-pop. Here are the categories that I'm going to cover today. I know some award shows have their own unique categories as well, but generally these are the main awards across the industry. Also, I won't be splitting up the groups and soloists like I did in part 1 of this video, but instead I'll feature them together, mainly due to time constraints. So with that in mind, let's jump right in. So the first category that I'm going to cover is the Artist of the Year. Here's my top 6. I'm just going to show you guys the whole thing first, as I know some of you don't want to sit through an entire video and just want to see my picks right away without any context. And that's just based on some of the comments that I've been seeing lately. Anyway, for those who do want an explanation, I'm going to do something a little bit different this time, where instead of going from group to group, I'll just give a quick rundown and try to tie things together as I go down the ranking. So right off the rip, I have IVE as the favorites to win, and here's why. Out of everyone you see on here, I would argue that IVE has been probably the most successful since the beginning of the year. So think of their 20 music show wins. Yes, you heard that right, 20 wins. Their 5th perfect all kill, both Empathy and IVE Secret selling 1 million copies, and they've held high rankings on all major platforms longer than anybody this year. Now I know music show wins aren't really taken into account when it comes to daesangs. I'm simply including that stat because it kind of tells us how well their song is resonating with their fan base. Still though, in just about every aspect, they've held the leading position, especially domestically where it matters most. If we want to talk more on a global scale, then Jennie would be the clear winner, as she has been infinitely more dominant than IVE. On an international scale, I mean, she's pulled over 2 billion streams on Spotify for her entire album Ruby, which is really impressive. She has also sold over 1 million copies of her album globally, but domestically it's just slightly over 500,000. And let's not forget about her 6 music show wins. Now, I know some platforms include global stats as well, but not as much as domestic numbers, so again, I think IVE has the upper hand in that area. And let's not forget about aespa, who is also just as strong as IVE in terms of sales. I mean, they've also sold 1 million copies for both Dirty Work and Rich Man. Now, they haven't earned a perfect all kill and have only reached the high ranking of first place for Rich Man. Dirty Work was close, but it only peaked at number 2, which is still pretty impressive nonetheless. As I've mentioned in my previous videos, I think a lot of fans are still riding the aespa hype train from last year, which is why they're still getting all these high numbers. I mean, I personally don't think anything from this year was as good as anything from last year, at least in terms of quality of work, but still, the numbers don't lie, which is why I think they still have great odds at winning this award. Not to mention, they've also achieved a staggering 14 music show wins so far. Clearly not as high as IVE, but still, I think aespa has like the second most wins in the industry this year. As for Jennie, I think out of all the soloists this year, it isn't even close in my opinion. I mean, the only other soloists that I think that could win a daesang this year are the rest of the Blackpink members, as their numbers have also been quite strong, but just not as consistent as Jennie's numbers from what I've seen, especially on the rankings across all domestic platforms. I will say though, I did see that both Rose and Jisoo were nominated at the Mama Awards, which is cool. Though for Rose, I don't think her songs from this year were as big as her album Rosie or even APT, which were both 2024 releases. Now, I don't think she'll win it, mainly because she already won a daesang for APT last year. Now, could she be in the running for Rosie? That's kind of tricky to me, especially since it was a December release, which was after the major award shows like Mama and the Melon Music Show Awards. So I guess so, but I'm not entirely sure. So I guess I would consider her a wild card for this year. In Jisoo's case, I think she did pretty solid as well, but Jennie has been a lot more dominant throughout the year. I know Jisoo has recently released a collaboration with Zayn for the song Eyes Closed, which has done remarkably well upon its first week, but again, it's too early for me to tell how it would match up against Jennie's work. Now, as for LE SSERAFIM, TWICE, and Islet, I kind of find it hard for them to go up against aespa and IVE, as those two have been at the number 1 spot for the majority of the year. I mean, you can look at just about any area, and they don't really compare in terms of sales, chart rankings, and definitely not music show awards. I will say, though, LE SSERAFIM is the closest overall, as they have reached the number 1 spot for the song Hot, but it wasn't for a long period of time, and their sales are over 750,000 copies. They have also picked up 4 music show wins and are actually doing much better on Spotify streams. Twice, on the other hand, actually have better sales at around a million total copies sold, so that includes all three of their albums for the year, with their album This Is For taking up the 750,000. However, their chart rankings aren't as high as either IVE or aespa's, but their streaming numbers are quite strong, and they still only have one music show win for the year. I know a lot of people have made comments on my last few videos about Twice being the standard and the best or whatever, and historically, yeah, I would agree, but this year they're just not the best, at least not on paper. Like, yeah, I can get behind that they got the best tour of the year since they're going all out for their 10th anniversary, which is great for them, but I just don't think that they're in the lead for Artist of the Year. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't want them to win. I think if anyone on this list won, then I would be quite satisfied. Obviously, if Jennie won it, then it would blow my mind away, but still, if Twice won it, I would still be cheering for them. Now, an award that I can definitely see them as a contender would be the Performance of the Year award. As for Islet, I think this year they really proved to us that they're the leaders of the fifth generation. Now, I kind of say that in conjunction that most of the fifth generation groups this year have been a bit underwhelming, at least for the better part of the year, but Islet really stood out with their releases for album Chocolate, Bomb, and Topping, and have actually been pretty strong on the charts and in sales. Still, however, like with the Seraphim and Twice, I don't think it's near the level of IVE or aespa. So with all that in mind, it kind of feels like a toss-up between IVE and aespa, with IVE having the slight edge in my opinion, more so for the longevity on the top of the charts. Obviously, Jennie is my favorite to win. I don't think that needs much explanation, but again, I would be happy if any of these groups won the award. Now, as for the next category, we got the Song of the Year. This one for me has a bit more leg room in comparison to the last category, as for every song that you see on here at one point in time has reached the number one spot on the domestic charts, with the exception of Dirty Work, as I previously mentioned that it peaked at number 2. Now, the reason why I have that ahead of Rich Man is just for its longevity on the charts. Even though Rich Man has been significantly more dominant in a short amount of time, it's only been out for like a month or so. But regardless, I think aespa belongs in the conversation. Now, I have Like Jennie at the number one spot for obvious reasons, and that's because it was like the biggest hit of the year. This song has been even bigger than Islet's Magnetic for its first year, and has reached almost 750 million streams on Spotify. Not only that, but it has even stayed in the high rankings across all domestic platforms throughout the year as well, and it's been out since March. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like this year there hasn't really been any big hits besides Like Jennie. I mean, especially when you compare it to last year, we had Whiplash, Crazy, Magnetic, Sheesh. I mean, I could keep going. So in that sense, 2025 has felt slightly underwhelming for the K-pop industry. Now, that's not to say that there weren't any good releases. I think there were tons of great releases. But comparing it to previous years, it's just not as good in my opinion. But anyway, one song that I think that could compare with Like Jennie is Rebel Heart. So IVE were one of the first groups this year to come out with a song, which was way back in January, and it's been consistently dominant on the rankings since then. I personally wasn't a huge fan of this song. I actually much preferred their song Attitude, but I can't deny IVE's success with Rebel Heart. This was the song that got them their 5th Perfect All kill, and has brought in over 11 music show wins alone. Really impressive, and honestly, it's a night and day difference when comparing it to their 0 wins last year. Another song to look out for is Blackpink's Jump. This song is catching up to Jennie really fast with over 250 million streams on Spotify, 10 music show wins, and has been a leader in every platform that I could find. Similar to Rich Man though, it hasn't had the same longevity as Rebel Heart or Like Jennie, but still I think it's a serious contender. The Seraphim's Hot has reached the number 1 spot on the rankings, but that song felt more like a short and sweet kind of moment this year. While it started out pretty strong, it hasn't had the same dominance as the rest of the songs on here. And as for Dirty Work, I remember that it got a lot of mixed feelings from fans when it first came out, and that includes myself to be fair. I feel like today though, the song kinda grew on me, and I like it a lot more now. Still though, it hasn't hit number 1 anywhere, and it really felt like a missed opportunity for aespa, as I think it had the foundation to be just as strong as their big hits last year, but it was just executed a bit underwhelming in my opinion. Numbers wise, yeah, it's been pretty strong in the rankings despite its mixed reactions from fans, but it hasn't even cracked 100 million streams on Spotify. So I think this song will get nominated, but I kind of doubt that it'll get a DAESANG. For Rich Man, however, I think it does have a lot more potential than Dirty Work, but again, it's only been out for a month or so. I mean, it reached the number 1 spot in the rankings quickly, but it's too early for me to tell how it will perform long term. Now, it did pick up an insane 10 wins so far, so it's being well received. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible for aespa, but I would say that it's unlikely for this award. To conclude, I think Jennie is the clear winner here, but again, I think IVE could come out on top considering how well it has performed throughout the entire year. Now let's move on over to the next category, and that's the album of the year. I think similarly to the artist of the year, it's kind of between IVE, aespa, and Jennie, at least for the favorites to win. So for IVE, their most successful release this year is Empathy. So it quickly sold over 1 million copies and has 2 songs that were dominating the domestic charts throughout the entire year. And of course, that's Attitude and Rebel Heart. And most importantly, the album itself has reached the #1 ranking as well. So for this comeback in general, it's been a total success from top to bottom. Now, IVE Secret has also reached 1 million sales, but hasn't been as powerful as Empathy. But still, I think IVE Secret could be a contender, as XOXZ is performing quite well. But again, I would say that it's too early to tell. In aespa's case, Rich Man is another album that comes to mind when we talk about albums that have reached 1 million copies. The title track has also reached the #1 ranking on the domestic charts, but the album alone has only peaked at #5 on the rankings. Now that's still really impressive, but that's where I think IVE has the slight edge. Jennie's Ruby, as mentioned earlier, has sold over 1 million copies globally, but domestically just over 500,000. With the album alone reaching as high as #2 on the rankings, and even Jennie couldn't reach the likes of IVE on the domestic charts, which is mind-blowing to me. Now I think the fact that the majority of her songs at one point in time have entered Melon's top 100 is really impressive and damn near impossible to do, since most of the releases out there you only see like the title track and maybe a B-side enter the charts. But for Ruby, from top to bottom was able to do that, so I gotta give her props for that. Now, I've already touched on IVE Secret a little bit, but I think similarly to Rich Man, it's just too early to tell. I still gotta give Rich Man the slight edge, since that album has reached the #2 spot, whereas IVE Secret only managed to reach #16 on the rankings. It also feels like XOXZ isn't as dominant as Rich Man if we want to compare title tracks here, so again, gotta give aespa the edge here. Another album to consider is Idol's We Are. I gotta admit, one of my least favorite releases from this list, but I cannot deny its performance. This album has achieved over 1 million copies within its first week, and has reached as high as #2 on the rankings. Now, the title track Good Thing didn't reach as high as XOXZ or Rich Man. Matter of fact, it still entered the charts, such as Circle Chart, but has been on the lower end of the list with a peak of #76. And finally, NMIXX for me should definitely belong in the conversation. Even though they haven't reached 1 million copies sold, they've still been able to sell over 750,000, but they did reach the #1 spot on the rankings. So for a group of their stature, who I would still say leans more towards on the underrated side of the industry, this is a remarkable milestone. Now recently, they've released their album Blue Valentine, which I think was well received by many fans, and has even reached the #1 spot on both Melon's Top 100 and Hot 100, which shows strong signs that more people are buying into NMIXX than ever before. And makes me really happy, as I feel like NMIXX has come a long way and have grown so much in the past year. Now, I still think that they're a good distance away from reaching the status of a group like aespa or IVE, for example, but I believe that if they continue pushing out well-crafted releases like they've been doing all year long, then they'll catch up in no time. As a result, again, I think it's a toss-up between IVE and aespa, and it really feels like they have the highest odds in pretty much every category. Now, I know some award shows have different DAESANG categories, which I think will flesh out the odds for other groups as well, but from what I can see so far, it really looks like aespa's and IVE's year. And for our final category, the Rookie of the Year. Kind of similar to part 1 of this video, I think it's still between both Hearts to Hearts and Kiki. I mean, both groups have had a lot of momentum before their debut, mainly because they were seen as the next big groups to come out of the biggest companies like SM and Starship, who today run 2 of the industry leading groups out there, aespa and IVE. And to be honest, my opinion hasn't really changed that much, as I still think Hearts to Hearts is the one with the clear advantage here. I mean, they've managed to pull in almost 500,000 copies upon their debut with The Chase, which is crazy, and have earned a double platinum certification. Not only that, but their following single Style has even reached higher peaks at #18 on the charts. Kiki, on the other hand, even though they've only managed to pull in half the sales, they've still reached pretty damn high on the charts with their song I Do Me, and have actually surpassed Hearts to Hearts in some areas, reaching as high as #13, and even have an extra win under their belt. One group that I think deserves to be within the conversation is ISNA. I think out of the majority of the rookie groups out there, ISNA is definitely the most slept on. I really feel like nobody ever talks about them, but their stats to me so far this year have been really impressive. Out of the groups that you see here, ISNA actually leads in music show wins, and have earned a total of 3 wins this year, which is 1 for every comeback. Now, even though they have lower sales, they're quite close with almost 250,000 copies sold so far, and have even reached as high as number 2 on Circle Chart's album ranking, which I think is really impressive for a rookie group. Again, I still think Hearts to Hearts is the favorites to win, but like the other categories that I've covered, I'd be quite happy if anyone here won the award. And there you guys have it, my final female K-pop day song predictions for 2025. I know this video may have felt kind of short and probably not as polished as my previous videos, but again, I just don't have as much time as I used to edit these videos. I actually ended up getting a new job and I'm actually doing quite well right now, but still, I have that itch to talk about K-pop. And I really enjoy making these kind of videos. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about the new format and my picks, and please share your predictions as well. I do love reading your guys' comments, and I do reply to them as much as I can. If you enjoyed the video, then please drop a like, as it does help out the channel a ton, and if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, then consider subscribing. That being said, thank you so much for watching, and take care.